So,
Sure.
great. All right. Welcome everybody to the October 19th Caroline Town Board Budget Workshop number 3. And so without further ado, I think we should start the budget workshop, and we invited Judge Barr to join us if she wanted to talk about her budget lines. And I will see if I can share my screen. That's not what I had in mind, so. Okay, let's see if I can do this. All right, so now I'm sharing the tentative budget worksheet, so just to review, let's see, here's the court lines here. So budgeted an 8.5% for the justice salaries, a 4% increase for the clerk salary. Typist is 0. I did not budget for the equipment line because I didn't know what that was about, so that might be a discussion. Contractual, I budgeted at 5,000. I think Judge Barr replied that that would be okay by email, and then I budgeted jury trial expenses. I kept that at 1,000 with the rationale that we had previously budgeted 1,000 and not used it, so it would be enough if we needed more. But anyway, so Judge Barr, are you here? Do you want to join in?
Yeah, so start with the jury trial. So when I sent the budget up, I put a note on that and I said that we need to start budgeting 2,000 because that's the actual cost. And I understand that we don't use it, but we have to budget it every year. And in fact, we do have a jury trial coming in November, and it will probably, I'm told it's going to cost us $2,000. So that is the budget line. And you're right, 90% of the years we just turn it back and don't use the money. But really, I'm just told that's what it costs now. It's been $1,000 for 10 years and probably 20 years. And just, we never changed it. Yeah, the contractual is for education, and we didn't travel much this past 18 months, so we didn't really use it. And I'm not sure how much we normally use. I think $5,000 plenty. So I'm wondering if the clerk is getting a raise. I mean, you could put more money in there, but if you don't give her a raise or an hourly raise, her salary a raise, it doesn't mean anything. So what does that mean?
So I explained that last time, but I guess you weren't there. But so anyway, I've you're right for that. For personnel lines that aren't salaried but are wage rate. I've put forward a 4% increase for those lines.
So for her hourly wage will go up 4%.
Hourly wage will go up by 4%. That's correct.
Just clarifying that. And I do appreciate the raise. We will still be the lowest paid judges in the county, but it's a step. And the equipment is I think that's just all of our expenses. So postage, paper. This year we bought the plastic on the floor that we wheel on was shredded. So we replaced those. We're about to replace the wheelie chairs in the clerk's office. It's just the stuff that we replace.
Okay, most of those things would be out of the contractual line.
So what's in the equipment line then? I thought the contractual was the judge's, that's the education, travel.
That would come out of that as well. But, you know, for all town offices, things like you described would be from I mean, equipment would be something like, you know, major equipment that you would purchase.
Yeah, we get all that from the state. So the state funds that, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I didn't know what the lines meant. I have notes on my, I guess I've annotated my budget incorrectly.
Okay. And I don't, so just did my screen change to a different sheet on my spreadsheet? Okay, so this is, I made a spreadsheet that shows some, these are expenditure amounts for these years, so you can get an idea of what was spent out of particular lines. So here you can see the court equipment is, well, it's pretty low usually. And then the court contractual, I agree with you that 5,000 seems, you know, in line with what's been spent. So, but that's fine. I'll put the jury trial expense at 2,000. That makes sense. Or I'll propose to do that.
So does anybody have any questions?
Any questions from the board? Does that seem reasonable? So let's see, going back to that spreadsheet. So the change that I will put in is, let's see, oh yeah, I was going to color code it. So I'm going to go ahead and put in 2,000 here. And it's a darker orange. Great, so I'll propose that. So that's the only change I'm seeing for the court budget from this discussion. There's that again.
So are those lines now clear to you, just to make sure, Judge Park?
Can you repeat that?
Are those expenditure lines clear to you, just to make sure?
Well, I'm kind of curious now. I don't, we just turn in our expenses and yes, I've annotated those two lines incorrectly, but I'm sure the supervisor knows what he's saying.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just to corroborate what I'm saying, I think the history shows that, you know, the court equipment line is an exceptional. It's exceptional that it's you know, it's mostly at zero or a low number.
The state provides our furnishings.
Okay.
For the most part. And the state provides all of our electronic equipment.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't actually, I mean, the things you described are things that for other town offices, we apply to the contractual line, the 0.4 line.
Yeah, I mean, it's just how you budget things and what's the name of the lines. It doesn't really.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
I have one question. The court clerk is paid wage. Is there any anticipation of additional hours, or the hours you just expect will kind of be what they have been?
Well, she's, so when Rachel was the clerk, she put in a certain number of hours, and our next clerk, Armstrong, her hours went down because she's more efficient. And the clerk Gare, her hours are going down because she's even faster still. So we're actually saving money. And then under Rachel, she had an assistant because she couldn't keep up during court.
And she had a typist, didn't she?
Well, it's called a clerk typist line, but it was really during court. She had an assistant there because she couldn't run everything fast enough to keep up. And Armstrong did away with that and never needed it, and Gare doesn't need it. So our clerks are we're hiring people that are better and better. And they get the job done in less time. Gare is incredible. She's very fast.
That's great. That's great.
Thank you for that background.
All right, so if there's nothing else, I'll move on. Thanks for joining us, Susan.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So moving on, so let's see, so I think Bob is here. And we'll move on. I think the other lines that were in question were highway lines, and also this the traffic control line. So so the annual expenses for that line are here. This was related to the LED streetlight project and purchase of streetlights. Based on the expenditures this year, I'm projecting that by the end of the year, it will spend $1,815. So the tentative budget has $2,500. And in 2019, I calculated that about $4,017 of this line, of this number, came from the streetlights. So that leaves, I guess another, about $1,000. So, so Bob, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
You were concerned about highway signs, or?
Mark, I have a question. Yeah.
Go ahead, somebody.
So, yeah, I was concerned with lowering that to 2,500. A lot of the roads in town, I'm sure a lot of people have noticed, but the signs are just about ancient. What we're doing now is, as we redo a road, we're now changing all of those signs to high visibility signs, which is what they're all going to have to be here shortly.
Right.
So lowering it that much, we won't be able to do that and get the other stuff that we normally take out of that account.
Okay. And so what is your estimate for what is needed there? I can't remember if you had it last time or not. 3,500, is that what we decided?
I think we had it a little bit higher than that. I think we were at like the $4,500 range. Some of it's going to be a little, the prices of things are going through the roof daily.
Sure.
So going into next year, I'd like to be able to say, I could tell you how much, a sign's going to cost, but it's actually getting scary at the moment, to be honest.
So
Mark,
you'd like
can I ask you a question to help me understand this, at least maybe it'll help. The 27,000 obviously, excuse me, is an outlier because of the LEDs. But
Right.
when I look at all these numbers now, the 25, if we just take that out, the 2,500 is a pretty serious outlier. I mean, 2021 COVID and all that, but like, what was the 7, the 6, the 8, the 5? I don't myself understand their rationale for it going down so much.
So the reason I based it mainly on this number, which is what is expected to be spent from that line this year. And the reason for that is the conversion to LED streetlights, which has dramatically reduced the costs from that line.
What
So-
else, what goes into traffic control other than streetlights?
So then that's what Bob is talking about, which is purchasing signs. So that's why I was looking for input from him for how much he feels like he needs for that line.
So it's not strictly just signs, it's road cones, it's any safety equipment that revolves around traffic. So our vests, we go through those, anything like that comes out of that account.
Bob, if we were to like want one of the like your speed is signs or like those kinds of mitigating measures, is that in this line or is that a separate line?
Tentatively that could come out of that line.
Yeah.
Like those speed signs are $3,500 alone.
Yeah, I think it would come out of this line. I agree.
So I guess if I could just speak for myself, but my opinion is that I would advocate for this being higher, much higher, given I actually, it was interesting being in Vermont this weekend. One of the things I really noticed very significantly, even in all these teeny tiny towns, is that the speed mitigation and the signage and the your speed is and all the flashing. And I mean, it was pretty remarkable how much of that there was. And it was just noticed by me as I drove through. So I don't know if that's something we want to think about. I would
Yeah,
be happy.
I noticed
spend
that
money
just
on that.
tonight for the first time at our own highway department. So
What's that?
I noticed that tonight for the first time at our own highway department when I was driving home, that there's a your speed is sign there.
Yeah.
So I agree. So, but so yeah.
So I guess just one question that I have, everybody, is if, because the supply chain is so completely screwed up right now, and that means that prices are crazy overinflated, would we want to consider waiting a year, Bob, before doing massive sign replacement? On, just on a gamble that might put us in a better position.
Or is that what you're proposing?
No, I mean, I'm not proposing that, Mark, but
Okay.
I mean,
You were starting the process, right?
yeah, we're just starting. So we're doing a small step into this whole process where everything's going to have to be changed over. And the only real way to do that was kind of one road at a time. I mean, one road is up to 10, 15, depending on how long that road is. Meadow Road, for example, there's over just a dozen signs alone, and we could probably count a few more. So it does add up quick, and if we were to change every one in town, it would be a ridiculous number. So it would be nice if things would go back down, of course, but who knows when that's going to happen, or if they're not even going to go down, if they just go up from here on out.
Hey, Bobby, can I just ask, out of curiosity, how the signage works? Do we get the signs printed? Do we buy the raw materials and then get the signs printed, or how does that work?
So we don't actually have a print shop, so to say. The county used to, they don't anymore. Everything is bought. We call them up, we tell them what we need, what size, and then it's just delivered.
All right. Just thinking back to my childhood.
Yeah.
Can of Rust-Oleum paint and some stencils.
Yeah, I think those days are gone, Kale.
Yeah.
You need something to keep you busy, Cal.
Yeah. If you throw out the high and the low and average the other four, you get 6,800, but then that doesn't take into account the decrease in the expense of the traffic light, or not traffic lights, but
The LED street lights,
the street lights. Thank you.
which was, yeah. Could we, I mean, I'd recommend that we put in an estimate. And if, it doesn't have to, like, if we wanted to get an additional Your Speed Is sign, excuse me, we can get that, we can get that from other lines, if, we can. So I guess I'm just thinking of, like, seat of the pants, like, what do you think you need for your sign replacement this year? What number would look good there? 5,000? 6,000?
Yeah, right. Yeah, right around that is fine. Hopefully going forward, we'll know, more as far as prices.
Exactly. So I'll put, I'll put 5,500 in there. Does that sound good?
That's fine.
Great. Highway clerical. You were suggesting 17,000 for that one. Bob, I just put the history here to think about again, so.
Yeah, it needs to be at least that, just to cover the line, and that doesn't, account for if we're increasing that line by 4%.
Yeah, it does. It would. Oh, this one? 15 doesn't, you're saying?
15 doesn't even cover what it is now.
Right. And I mean, 17,000 covers what 20 hours would be at a 4% raise, I'm pretty sure.
17 covers exactly what it is now.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
Okay, so. So I made the ones colored here that I thought were ones that we were considering changing. So in the next one, I thought these white ones, I think were all good. Is that correct?
50, 10.4.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that was budgeted for
Oh,
14.5 this year.
oh, did I get that wrong?
Unless I'm thinking of a different account.
I think you might be. So anyway, the tentative budget number is 5,000, and that's what I have in this chart.
Yeah, we're actually already over that, Mark. That's the contractual line for the office. We've always budgeted that at 50, and we cut it down a little bit, last year, but.
So so it's true we budgeted 14,950, but projected through a year, at least according to what I have, is 4,199. So that's why I budgeted there. But you think we need 14,950 in there or whatever?
We haven't been able to take a training class in 2 years. The guys are all 2 years behind on training.
Okay, and those are where
That-
those come from?
Well, that's just part of what comes out of that. I mean, there's a ton of other stuff that normally comes out of that.
Hmm. All right, so I'll put it back where it was budgeted before. If that's what you recommend.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So let's see here. 14,950. And then the next one is the highway. So the others are okay, right? That are in white.
Yeah,
Okay. So I think I've budgeted the equipment line at 142,000. And you're asking for 202,000, which is considerably more. I think that 142 is 12. I boosted that by 12,000 after an initial discussion, but I guess I'll just share some previous, just try to give some context on that from my perspective. So let's see here. So most of you have seen this before. I worked this up last year when we were grappling with this, just to get a sense of where we are and what our if 130,000 was reasonable for the equipment line. So this spreadsheet shows the highway equipment line from 96 to present. This is the amount spent and then budgeted. And then here's what I was, if we had budgeted 130,000 each of those lines, what it would look like. And so, and I separated, let's see, so from 2012, what you notice that there are some big numbers right in here related to the Great All and then the new snowplow. So those boost numbers spent from 2016 on. So so through 2016, from 96 through 2016, this shows the amount spent and then the annual average. And then if we had done it, with the 130,000 number, that's the amount it would have been. So I just did this to show that 130,000 is, would have been well covered the expenses for that period and represent 150% increase in budgeting for that line. So
But in 1996, a new truck cost 130,000, and in 2020, a new truck cost 240,000.
sure, I recognize that, Cal.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's see, stop share.
What's the 2730 number that it would have
Sorry.
gone up? The expenses would have been the same, but you're saying if it was budgeted differently, the difference in the 18.
Oh, so I'm just saying this column is a pretend column. So
Mhm.
this is the total sum of, if you'd budgeted $130,000 in all these years, that's what you would have raised.
Mhm.
So, and that's why the annual average comes out to 130,000 when you divide by that. So that's all that is. It's just to show, it was my way of showing that 130,000 is quite a step up from what we've been budgeting over the past 20 years.
Hey, Mark, can you go back to that screen for a second?
Okay, let me do it again.
Can you scroll to see all right, right there. You can look at, I mean, if you go all the way back to 2004, you budgeted 125, you spent 155. You budgeted 196 in 2003, you spent 180.
Well, sure, there are going to be years when,
Well, if you look at your budgeted line, there's a lot of years there that are not at 130.
well,
It
right,
was clearly above 130 all the way up until about 2011. And then all of a sudden it drops down to 100. It actually goes the wrong way. I mean, your budgeted number should be increased every year, not reduced every year. And it's
Mhm.
kind of put us in the spot that we're in now.
Mhm.
We're so far behind as far as new, and I'd like to say reliable equipment.
Mhm.
So to say that we can make it on 130 when we couldn't make it on 130 in 2005. We couldn't make it on 130 in 99, couldn't barely make it in 1996. And as Cal said, in 1996, they bought that truck that we just got rid of for $92,000. And today it's $234,000.
Well, but the spent line is what was actually expended on equipment.
I understand that.
Yeah. So,
But 1996, you budgeted $90,000
right.
and spent 117. What I'm saying is the truck that was purchased in 1996
Mhm.
cost about $92,000. There was, I have the old bill of sale.
Sure,
what
I
I'm
have no argument that costs have gone up. So anyway, so
but it doesn't show that with to budget $130,000 doesn't show that inflation rate.
right. Okay. I get that. So I just want to, that's a valid point.
What was the year that it dropped from 150 to 100, Mark? Or Bobby, do you remember? It was 2011 to 2012,
It
I
was-
think.
Yeah, it was like right around the 11 mark, I think.
So what was going on? Does anyone know what was happening then? Like what happened from year
We-
to year that happened?
So we started saving back
For
then for the
Gradle.
Gradle.
Oh.
So pretty much every nickel that we had went into a Gradle fund, which took approximately 6 years just to buy that one piece of equipment, and nothing in the meantime was purchased.
And so the budget was supposed to reflect that, like, we're not supposed to be able to purchase anything?
Well, I mean, it does show it, in the sheet Mark just had that, and if for a few years there was only, 27,000 spent or 60,000 spent, which is basically trading in the smaller trucks, which, we get a decent amount back out of when we trade them in. So, starting at 2011, it's 23, 27, then there's some 60 numbers in there. But a lot of that budgeted money was just kind of piggy banked until there was enough to be able to purchase that Gradle.
Okay, thanks.
And then you can also see it like in the slide that I sent everybody. That's where that big spike kind of came up, was the big grade. That was a grade L purchase.
So, so which grade all purchase are you talking about, Bob? One in the past or?
In 2017, we purchased a grade L.
Oh, yeah, and we had that in, there was a lot of that was in the $100,000 worth, so.
Say that again, Mark.
Wow.
You were cutting out.
Yeah, oh, really? That's, yeah, we had that in a reserve account that came from the highway equipment line.
Right. That's what I.
But that, I mean, but that, the excess, that's not the only thing that, I mean, there's a lot more money there from the budgeted line than the 400,000, right? For the grade all.
The grade L was $380,000.
Mm-hmm. So. Okay, I'm gonna move on to my other sheet and make those points. So I presented, oops, sorry.
Takes $1.59 today to buy the same thing that you bought
So
for
here's
$1 in 2000. But then it's a broad index, but
So this is a worksheet that I worked up before from that I thought was helpful, and because I think we're, you know, so the anyway, what it shows to me is the importance of, you know, thinking about, like we've been trying to do, and what our capital equipment planning committee would do, of, you know, thinking about a rotation cycle that that works well for us. So so these, all I had, this is simplified. So these are the snowplow trucks, and here's the 1 tons and a loader. That's all that's in here. And you put in the cost new, the resale value, replacement cost. And these are all, so, and you can, then for each of the pieces of equipment, there's a line here where you can manipulate like the rotation cycle, excuse me, and the resale value. So this, I'm not presenting this as an answer at all, but just to you can see that it is helpful. Like if you change the rotation cycle down to 8 years, then the total estimated annual equipment cost, you know, jumps up like that. If you put it at 5 years, but also
So-
what I didn't change there was the resale value. So if I put 8 there and then made this say 0.6, see what that comes out to. So I think it's a useful tool to,
yep.
and it highlights the, you know, the need for us to think about how we, you know, space our purchasing, how we schedule it, how we pace it. And so again, this is not an answer, but I tried to just build out using what we've already done. Here's the 2 snow plows that we've purchased outright, and then here's the one we've bought on installment purchase over a 5-year period. So here's the 1 ton. And then, so, you know, I did this again using, I used the actual numbers for the equipment lines. So 180, 142, and then I used 130 going forward just to see where things would come out. So I made, so for any 1 year, so like here's the total for equipment costs. And then here's the budgeted amount. So that's the money put in, added to the coffers that year. And then this is the years, this is the same thing as the total. So this is total equipment expenses. And then this number would be the year's equipment sales revenue from, from cycling out a piece of equipment and selling it. And then here's the net, yearly net, and then here's the cumulative as you run between years. So, so yeah, and, so thinking about, what it shows to me, and what I did is for this spreadsheet, I said, well, if we have one snowplow, we purchased 3 snowplows. This one's on a 5-year equipment purchase. If we take the time to, let's see if I did that right. I think I might have no, I did it right. It's good. So that allows us to accrue $80,000 a year from the budget line towards future equipment costs, equipment purchases, I should say. And then I budgeted this snowplow as a direct purchase in 2026. And then I budgeted, I did the same thing for this other snowplow in 2031. And so with that schedule, according to the age of truck in 2021, the age when sold they'd all be sold around 20 years of age, and it would create at least an approximation of the spacing that would be useful, so that all of the trucks aren't on the same rotation cycle, in the same year, 1 to 3 years or something like that. So anyway, the punchlines
So
for
hey,
me are that, and what the bottom line shows the cumulative, and again, this is, so it does show that, we're not going underwater, that, the cumulative is increasing. So it's actually accruing.
hey, Mark,
So, yep.
so you have this is great, other than we're missing a lot of equipment. I don't mean this, don't take this wrong, but this number looks good here, but it's been made to kind of manipulate 7 trucks. We have pages of equipment, not just 7 pieces of equipment. So this number looks fine with a small handful of the equipment that we do have, but realistically, we have a lot more than what's on this sheet of paper. And if we're going to drag out one truck and say we're not going to buy another truck for another 5 years, then we aren't digging ourselves out of anything. We're actually going to continue to take the trend that we've taken for the last 20 some years, 30 years, 40 years. Prices are going up. And as we said before, you've got a number of $240,000 6 years from now. That's what it costs today.
No, yeah, so.
Hey, Mark, can I ask a question? So how you've averaged this just based on these trucks is by direct purchase, correct? From here on
That's
out.
right. Yep.
So I guess one of the things that I'm just thinking, and I know that philosophically, it's probably best to think of direct purchase because we're not paying interest rates. But what would happen if we were to mix direct purchase with leases as we just did? Even if it was every third or something like that, is a way of changing this. Would that change
Well,
the projection
I
in a
mean,
way that would then leave perhaps some additional funding to help cover the cheaper stuff that's still in the pool. You hear what I'm asking?
Mhm.
Yep.
I'm just wondering if that would make an adjustment at all and
Well, yeah,
as in, ideally, we
um,
wouldn't want to do this, but we are in kind of a screwed up situation.
I think that's a really interesting question, Tim. You know, I think we've been looking at it as a very binary choice, but maybe it isn't, right? Maybe there is some combination that can shift depending on economic circumstances, particularly with cost of things, supply chains and all of that.
yeah, so I mean, I agree with that. I mean, this is I mean, I've used what we've done so far, plus, I mean, I guess my decision point going forward on direct purchase versus installment would be necessity. So, you know, if I think it makes total sense to do a direct purchase if you can, but you know, we bought the snowplow, this last one, on installment purchase to move forward more expeditiously with getting that in place. So, so yeah, I think that I think it's important to remember. So first of all, you're adding finance charges, and you know, if you're stacking installment purchases up for multiple, you know, plows at the same time, that's taking a hit on your
But what counts is the cost of ownership, and if you have to pay a little interest, a lot of interest, but your cost of ownership goes down. And Bob has shown me some new record keeping he's putting in place where it's going to give him a better handle on what the cost of ownership of each of that pieces of equipment are.
well, I have to know what you're talking about there, Cal. What do you mean cost of ownership?
Well, I thought we were talking about what maintenance, that the idea of installments is going to save money in the long run. Maybe if that's not what you're talking about, Cal, forgive me, but that's, I guess, what I'm thinking.
I think that's actually what Cal's talking about is.
Right,
That would
um,
be part of cost of ownership.
right.
Yeah.
Like I thought
You
that was
know-
one of the motivations to go to an installment plan, which was we're not going to be having all these maintenance costs and repair costs and cost of ownership, as Cal's saying, like that's one of the objectives, but perhaps I'm misunderstanding.
No, or just or what I call opportunity costs. I remember standing down the highway barn one day when the snow was blowing and they couldn't get the damn truck started because,
But
you know, and
why? I mean, what those maintenance costs are related to the rotation cycle, not the purchase method.
Right,
Well,
So if you can purchase it you're always better off purchasing directly, right? If you can afford it.
well, I
Hey,
think,
So
oh,
if
sorry,
I-
John, but
yeah, thanks, Bobby. In an absolutely clean world, right, where we always have the money to make that purchase, you're absolutely right, Mark. But I think the push point is that our ability to replace the vehicles when we're buying them outright, at least as we've done it historically, means we've got to extend the life of our vehicles. So we hit some tipping point where we start investing in the maintenance of those vehicles. And there's an economist could do all the curves on this, and that's not me, but there's a point, right, where we cross where maintenance costs exceed the costs we would have if we had just simply paid the interest. That's probably
absolutely.
that's probably what we need to actually understand. What is that point? And
Yeah,
that would
that's
tell
what I'm
us,
trying to get at.
yeah.
Sometimes you got to euthanize, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not an economist, but I'm a veterinarian. I can tell you at a certain point.
Right, yeah, it's diminishing returns, right?
Right.
And, you know, yeah.
No, I totally agree with that. But I just maintain that it's not related to how you purchase the vehicle. It's how you manage the rotation cycle.
we could definitely buy these outright, but we can't do it on 130,000.
Right.
Oh,
And what I
that's-
was, what I was thinking, Mark, was that in order to keep at 130,000, which seems to me to be an ideal position, we would need to then consider at least an alteration of lease and purchase, just in order to be able to do it. If we're going to also figure in the possibility of needing to take care of some of the rest of the inventory. I mean, we just might have to do that. And one of the things that I thought that we were excited about last year when we first decided to do this was that that would give us that option, realizing that we do get a lot of bang for our buck when we are able to buy the equipment outright, if we have that cash. Also figuring in the fact that if we end up building a new highway barn, probably we're going to have a little bit less flexibility for a little bit of time to mess around with this. And that might just be a completely separate thing. But
Mhm.
on the other hand, if we build a new highway barn, and I don't know if we've thought about this yet, probably the line that we've been using to save up for the highway barn will have to be used for a bond payment, I guess. But
Absolutely.
we have that money too to think about. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we sat through numerous meetings between Danby. We sat through a big one with the town of, or the city of Big Flats. The city of Big Flats flat out said that they can't buy equipment outright. They don't have a pocketbook big enough to do that. The way they got around that was the installment plan. Again, they were able to buy multiple pieces of equipment per year for less money. Yes, it is stretched out, and you do pay some finance charges. But the finance charge we just paid on the truck that we just bought, I will have a repair bill for 3/4 of that on one truck alone. And I'll have that hopefully here in another week or so. We had an older truck go down. It's what I'm trying to get across is we can't keep this stuff for 20 years. The trucks that we had 20 years ago,
That's not what I'm proposing. I'm not proposing that.
you just proposed it on your last sheet. You
No, I
have a-
didn't. That was a 10-year rotation on that sheet.
Oh, I misunderstood that too, Mark. It looked to me like it was
Okay.
20 years.
Oh, okay.
So
So,
might
oh,
just
I
be
did,
how-
sorry.
I thought you said
I'm
you were
sorry.
assuming a 20-year lifespan of each truck, but maybe.
Yeah, so
Oh,
did I.
no. Okay, I'm glad you brought that up. So that's why I gotcha. Okay, no, I'm not proposing that. Please.
Yeah, I thought that was more historical data.
Yeah, what I was, are you seeing a yellow, a spreadsheet with
Yes.
yellow on it? Okay,
Mhm.
so all I did, I think you're looking at this number
Yeah.
or something. I just meant for this first, yeah, so I see what you're saying. So, but you'll see like for this one, so it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's a 10-year rotation. And I did approximately this one's less 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-year rotation. This one's, so for the others, I was doing 10 or less. All I was
Okay.
saying, if we for this trajectory I've plotted here, it would mean that the existing fleet that we started with would have all been traded out at about 20 years. So that's what that confusion came from, I believe, I hope.
So, right. And I guess that would work in a perfect world if we were starting with everything brand new. But we're not. Truck 350 currently is a 2010.
Yeah.
Like on your sheet, you have it in 2031.
Right, so it would be changed. it would be changed out at 20 or 21 years, whatever that is. So I'm just saying that that's how I created this scenario, that, the advantage of it to me is it does create a rational spacing schedule, a rotation schedule, based on, we could alter this, depending on, a better analysis of how repair costs increase over time and how resale costs decrease over time, which are necessary.
Right, so
numbers.
I give everybody a sheet a couple weeks ago, and I know there was a lot of numbers on it. But if you look at those numbers, just because we're buying trucks more frequent doesn't mean we're going in the hole. With the numbers that I'd sent everybody, it actually shows the resale. I figured everything on a 7-year rotation, it brought the resale values up extremely higher, which offsets our number in the end. So, with this, we won't get anything out of truck 350 when it's time to sell it. Just so everybody knows, we sold truck 220. We got $6,000 for it. And I had to become an extremely good salesman in order to get that. It really wasn't worth anything. And if we can trade something in once it's out of warranty,
Right.
we've alleviated repair bills. We've alleviated a lot of the major headache, and in 7 years, we're starting
Yeah, I mean,
over.
that truck bought scrap prices. I mean, you could have probably got,
I probably could have parted it out and got more, maybe.
probably a lot more work to do that.
But New York State says a snowplow truck needs to be replaced in 5 years. This is coming from the guys that drive in a straight line. They don't do hills, it's straight from Richford to Ithaca. And they're saying their trucks need to be replaced in 5 years.
Mhm.
I mean, our trucks do an amazing amount of work.
And one of those state trucks has never done a 360 coming down Taft Hill either.
No.
Oh
Exactly.
dear, I wouldn't want to be the driver of that truck. Oh, well.
Well, I think that, I mean, this is one of the reasons that I'd really like to have this equipment committee. Because we're not going to be able to make these decisions in the next 2-3 weeks. long
Yep,
term, but we
you're
really
absolutely
need-
right, Tim.
We really need to, I mean, we've made so much progress in the past year and a half. Just even thinking about this.
Yep.
That I think we need to have that equipment committee get going and
I agree.
figure out an acceptable bottom number for this year. And
So-
then based upon, an immediate plan, realizing that we're gonna have to, I'm hoping within the next year, it could be reasonable that we could really systematically plot out and then agree on a strategy of replacement cycles. But I don't see that we're in a position to do that yet because we haven't had the committee and
Yeah.
the numbers are also fresh.
So if I can add to that, Tim.
Yeah.
I mentioned, I don't think you were on the meeting when I mentioned it, but
No, I wasn't here a couple of weeks ago, Bobby.
I went to the highway conference a couple weeks back. And it was great. I actually got to talk to 100 different highway superintendents. A lot of them I've never met. But the one question I asked everybody I met was, what kind of a capital plan do you have for equipment? The majority of those folks politely laughed at me when I had said that I was looking for a long-term equipment capital plan. The answer that I got from 90% of those people was, you can't possibly plan that far ahead. There's so many variables, at the highway department, and just in equipment alone, it changes from year to year drastically. And what you change in one year now completely changes your whole capital plan, moving forward.
Sure, but you
Um,
can have it, but you can have a skeletal strategy and plan, Bobby, understanding always that in a given year, it's going to go like this and go like this, as opposed to, I mean, what's happened to this town prior to a couple of years ago is that nothing was done and there was no planning at all, near as I can tell. And it's resulted in this freaking mess, and so if we can have a strategy, call it a strategy, don't call it a plan, let's call it a capital strategy. And at least then we could have, I mean, there's no way we wouldn't be able to build out a strategy in a 5 to 7 year stretch for sure. That based on
Yeah.
best case scenarios, right? I mean, we have to do something like that.
Yeah,
right.
think so.
I think it's more realistic to do 5 or 7 years than it is to try to come up with something for 30 years.
Sure, but
It-
just realizing that if we do 5 to 7 years, everything isn't likely to get replaced. We just know that.
No, we would only know of a few things that would get replaced.
Yep, I agree with that. So I don't, I think we need to decide on a budget number now to put in the budget. I don't think we need to wait for, I don't know. So it looks from your head nodding, Tim, I think you're agreeing, so I might have misunderstood you, so that's good.
Oh,
But
yeah, I just think, I mean, I say we need to decide on a budget number now, and then let's get really serious about this
Okay.
5 to 7 year plan.
Right. I mean, I think
Right.
there's a short term and longer term and long term, but I mean, I think it sounds like are we all in agreement that 130 is not sufficient for the immediate decision?
so I just want to, before we go there, I had a couple more thoughts that I wanted to add to the conversation for our consideration. So
Sure.
I wanted to go back to the fund balance shows that the DA, the highway fund balance is in extremely good shape, and there's, from these numbers, it looks like there's more than $250,000 available above the top recommended percentage fund balance in our fund balance policy. So there's available funds there, and so I for that reason, and I agree that the actual number that we want to set or put in place for expected annual equipment purchases is still to be determined. I don't think 130 is unreasonable. I do think it is an increase from recent years. So now for this year I have it at 142. So I don't think it's far off, and I think it's reasonable to leave it there, given that the fund balance is in pretty good shape. So that would be my,
Mark, are you
Right.
saying leave it at 142?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I just wanted to finish those thoughts, so. But this has been a helpful discussion and clarification. So.
I mean, one of the things that we do have to keep in mind is the responsibility to the taxpayers not to overgrow the fund balance, so that if we can do this work that we're talking about within this budget year and then count on fund balance to cover any overages, seems to me like that would be a good way to proceed. Otherwise, we could be over budgeting, and then we'll have an even bigger fund balance. And right now, the fund balance for highway seems to be much higher than we've had before, if that logic makes any sense at all.
Yeah, those are my thoughts too, Tim.
What's prevented that fund balance from being used before? I guess I don't understand, but this is new to me. Like, what's the barrier to you? Why is it so big right now then?
Well, so fund balance floats around from year to year based on unspent funds at the end of the year. So it's not like intentional not using of funds. And so, you know, it's actually a useful buffer for the town to have. And I guess I do want to emphasize that the 15 to 20%, you know, amount that we've specified for a responsible fund balance, you know, for a small town, that's well, the comptroller's office will not tell you what the number is. And so they're very cautious about that. They'll say, you know, 2 months of budgeted expenses and things like that. So, but it's in the ballpark. And I think for smaller towns, it doesn't hurt for it to be larger. So it's not like the money hasn't been spent, you know, purposefully or whatever. But, and I think it's a separate, it should be thought of as town resources, that is really separate from our decisions about how to responsibly manage capital equipment purchases and things like that. So.
That's helpful, I guess. So, but should it be kept separate from discussions about budget then?
Well, but I do think that I mean, I think it's true what Tim said is that you don't want to grow it too much. So you don't want to overtax your citizenry. And so, and you know, I'm always cautious about looking at this because it's based on projections through the year, but we are, you know, we're 3/4 of the way through the year. So my, you know, here's projected year-end expenditures for A fund and D fund. You are looking at the tentative budget worksheet, right? So is the cursor moving around there? Okay.
Yep.
And then the revenues. So this is showing, you know, some kind of significant surplus in the DA fund. So that's also reassuring, but suggests that we certainly don't want to over budget, to me. So,
Is the fund balance something that, like, let's say, for example, there's a truck that's slated for, you know, I don't know, to be around until a certain year. And then that truck doesn't make it to that year because the truck, you know, doesn't. Is that then the fund balance, could that be used for, I mean, there's not going to be enough money in it based on the numbers, but like, could it be used then to purchase or put a down payment on a new truck in that year that the other truck failed, for example?
it can be by board resolution. Yeah.
Okay.
Some of the only problem with that is trucks are, well, today trucks are 1.5 years out. If you ordered one tomorrow, you won't see it for 1.5 years.
But we'll have that problem regardless. I mean, you know, I mean, that's just, that kind of goes without saying. I think Catherine was just trying to get a sense, Bobby, of how flexible fund balance use could be in an emergency situation, regardless of when the truck would actually show up, you know.
I mean, I just want to make sure that, like, I'm just trying to make sure for myself, if the rationale is like, we're not going to increase this one number because this other number is high, then I just want to make sure that realistically that fund could be used when, or if necessary. And if that's the case, then it feels like it's money that's usable. If it's like for some other reason or reasons which I don't understand, like not a thing that happens, like it just doesn't get used, then it doesn't seem like the rationale.
Yeah, no,
Does that sound-
it's called unrestricted fund balance, and that's,
Okay, that was going to be my question. It is, or comment, it is unrestricted. For highway equipment use. Which way is it? It can't, DA money can't go
DA
to
can't.
A.
yeah,
Yeah.
correct.
So as an appropriation for equipment for 2022, can we do 195,000 and under the revenue side, whatever the difference is coming from that fund balance to go to that, just so that Bob sees a agreed on number for.
I mean, the more I think about this, I mean, I think that I would be comfortable with the 140, whatever it is, number, assuming that this board, and it's not going to change radically in the next 2 years, 2.5 years, has the understanding that if we had an emergency request within the next year from Bob, where we had to then think fund balance, we'd be inclined to do so. And hopefully that wouldn't happen, but I think that that's what you're asking, right?
Yeah,
Well,
Okay,
Cal's asking for like a more formal
yeah.
commitment to
Exactly.
that.
Oh, I don't think we can formally commit to use the fund balance in advance, right? But we can all agree that we would be inclined to consider a request if it was an emergency to do so.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Tim.
Well, it definitely feels like we should have that understanding. I mean, would be ideal. I assume we do. I shouldn't assume, but that we agree on that and strongly support the highway needs, all of us.
I mean, that would be true for all town needs, I think.
Yep.
Yep.
Because we still have the reality that when push comes to shove, we have to fall under the tax cap. So we can't just add on numbers willy-nilly.
Tim, I feel like you just came up with an album title for a really bad 70s singer-songwriter.
I love it. I love it. It was perfect.
When push comes to love.
Neil Sedaka's greatest hits.
Yes.
Well, I guess based on the totality of the conversation, so I'm strongly in favor of putting feet under the highway, under the capital planning committee. And I did have a conversation with Megan, and Barbara, who's, she hasn't committed, but she didn't reject it either and asked questions about it. So she's tentatively intrigued by it. And then, you know, I think the discussion tonight's been really helpful. And yeah, I would recommend that we stick with we go with the 142 number, and that's not irresponsible, that and that we can go from there. And then our goal for next year at this time would be to have it fine-tuned by virtue of the capital planning work. So I don't think I stated anything too revolutionary there, but anyway.
I think I'm comfortable with that. I mean, I just feel like compared to where we were 2 years ago, we're just at a whole different level of consideration and strategy and even understanding of possibilities. And it's just going to get better within the next year. I just think we need a little bit more time to parse out all these numbers.
Tim,
And to really understand.
Did you get a chance to look at the numbers?
Just quickly, Bobby, quickly. And I don't have them in front of me. Sorry, I can't get them on my screen, but I did notice, I mean, there was something missing in it, wasn't it? Was it the loader or something that didn't get figured in? I can't remember. But there
No,
was
the loader's figured out. Actually, I figured that out. Trading that in there.
I can't remember, but there was something that I was going to ask you about that just looked like it might then skew the figures just a little bit. So, but I'd have to look at it. I just can't remember.
So if I can speak kind of clearly, or not clearly, but freely, I guess is the better word. And again, don't take any offense to what I'm saying. For me, it's a little frustrating. You guys have asked me for 2 years to put numbers together. And I've done that, and I've put a lot of time into putting these numbers together. One remark that I have heard is it's more of a wish list than a capital plan. I'm not looking at this as a wish list. The numbers I've given you, they're the numbers. They're not the numbers I want. They're not the numbers you guys want, but they are the numbers. They're the realistic, this is where we're at. This is what we need. And going forward, we cannot do the same things that we've done, you know, over the past. We're not talking about spending, you know, $400,000 or $500,000 a year. We're talking about spending, you know, less than that. It just seems like we're going back to where we were years ago. The prices on everything have gone up. I priced a wood chipper, a small wood chipper, not any bigger than what we have, just a little more safety oriented, to replace the one we have. In a matter of 3 months, that wood chipper has gone up $18,000. The same wood chipper I priced 3 months ago, it's up $18,000. And to look at a number of 140, I mean, just the price of 1 tons alone. We were lucky enough to get one of the last ones that were available. They don't see these prices going down. These prices are inflated thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And I can say that, you know, all night, that nothing's going down, everything's going up. And it seems like we're sticking with a number that was handed out in, you know, 2001, 2002. Trucks are $100,000 more expensive than they were 20 years ago, and we're still working off the same budgeted number. So for me, I've taken the time to put the numbers together and I guess I just want to say that, again, the numbers are the numbers, whether we like them or not. It's the cold hard truth that this is where we're at and this is where we're headed. And those numbers that I sent, I actually budgeted to put 50,000 aside for another truck, knowing that that truck will be a year and a half before it gets here. So I'm already looking ahead, you know, a year and a half and thinking about that. And we replaced with what I sound, we replaced multiple pieces next year. And when I asked for 202,000, in the end, we stand to get about 60,000 of that back. Just by replacing, you know, those select pieces that are on a somewhat of a rotation now. But the longer we stretch the stuff out, it gets harder and harder for me to keep that number lower because there's just no revenue coming back. And we can by all means sit down and come up with some kind of a capital
Strategy.
plan or call it what we, you know, need to, but it doesn't change the fact that we're still working with, you know, 18-year-old trucks. I still have a 21-year-old truck that's on the front line now. And it was one that we wanted to replace this year. But a truck that was actually 4 years newer. We can't keep the thing running. I can't keep it on the road. I can't, it trumped the 21-year-old truck. That truck will be 25, 26 years old if we keep going the way we're going. So I'm trying to dig us out of a bad situation. But it, you know, on this $140,000, it's just, I can't dig fast enough.
So I'm wondering, I mean, I hear Bob's point certainly, and I think there's data to suggest that, you know, this path probably isn't sustainable long-term. I feel like I hear consensus on that. I wonder if we
Wait,
this
what
year,
path?
the path we've been on. So
Right.
I wonder if we look at this year, since we do have fund balance, as an investment toward committing to that capital plan that we've talked about for many, many years, like back to really when Megan Barber was on the board, and raise the amount this year and then sit down over the next year and really figure out where is that diminishing return line and do a true capital plan, whether that's buy it outright, whether that is lease as Bob is suggesting and sell, or finance and sell, whichever iteration. But I hear the point that, you know, our current thing is not sustainable. We know that, and we know, and over the, you know, almost 8 years I've been on this board, I've seen us spend a hell of a lot of money in repairs that over a couple of years probably could have bought us new vehicles. And I understand why we did. I'm not dinging anybody for that, but I do think it's time to make a strategic shift. And I guess I would support, maybe this is the pivot point.
I just want to push back on that a little, John, because we have spent a ton of money on new equipment, over $1 million in the
Sure.
while I've been supervisor. So,
That's-
so you know, I did present the figures on the rising repair costs over the last 20 years, and so that is something that we've been turning around. So, and it should be turning already with the changes we've made. So I agree with you on that.
A few things. Oh, sorry, Mark.
No, that's okay.
Just a few things that I'd like to mention is we went into this year, really hoping to start decreasing this repair line. And it was looking like we were headed that way. And then COVID came along.
Sure.
COVID has increased the price of tires alone more than 30%. The whole supply and demand thing, it goes down to plastic pipe. A lot of places won't even sell plastic pipe to municipalities at this point. Because they can make more off selling it in the private sector because it's in such demand. There's just a lack of it. Again, tires are the same way. So our repair number where we thought it would go down, it's definitely not going to go down this year, and it probably won't go down next year. One thing alone, we're on the hunt for a set of brake shoes for a dump truck at the moment. We can't get them anywhere. Nobody has them, and nobody can tell us when we're going to get them. This is going to be a huge problem, going forward. I'd like to say it's going to turn around in the next month or two, but realistically, it's probably not. But our stuff that we're spending in repair money is going to go up drastically just with the inflation where it's at now. And, I'd like to say the parts are only going up 1.3%, 1.5%, but it's not true at all. We're talking 20-30%.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Bob, everybody probably realizes that. And it's a uniform thing across the supply chain. That's just one of the reasons that I mentioned earlier, that maybe instead of worrying about doing everything this year, that if we even took a pause on some of this stuff, that maybe things would even out a little bit within a year and a half. Probably, who knows, the prices might not go down, but they sure might not go up as much. And I would well imagine that'll be the case. But right now, absolutely, things are just totally out of whack. And no matter what we budget, the supply chain is going to be affected by that anyway.
Catherine?
I guess I just feel confused, I guess, if I'm gonna just be honest and name what I'm experiencing, which is like some conflict that I'm not understanding very well. So I think if someone can help me understand I'm hearing Bob saying, and has said consistently since I've been on the board at least, that he is trying to move this in a particular direction and has provided data to support the things that he is saying. And I have I don't have the expertise that you do, Bob. So I'm not in a position to say that that's not the way to go or is the way to go. Like we're all here as a team to kind of contribute what we can to the team. And I trust that what Bobby is contributing to the team is like reasonable because that's his area of expertise. And I also hear, Mark, that you understandably also have a responsibility to be fiscally responsible, and we're dealing with a tax cap and all of those things. So like I hear both of these things, and I'm still hearing like a funny amount of like tension, and I don't fully understand why. So I think I guess I just want to name that because that, I think in order to move forward, we need to figure out like where we're really headed. And I don't fully understand what is happening here.
So I am glad so that's an interesting, it kind of leads into what I was going to say is I think we're all in agreement actually. And it seems like, we've just proposed, several ways to skin the same cat. And, oh, that's a bad metaphor. But the, so I think, I feel a need to understand what our options are better. But I think we have a commitment to, supporting highway needs. I think, we've done that. And I think that that we have, the difference between what Bob is asking and what I proposed is, $60,000. And we have that in available fund balance if that is needed. So I don't think there's any disagreement there. So it seems, I just want to understand better. So I presented a scenario where we would, I was saying it'd be great to switch over to direct purchasing because then we're not paying finance charges and it allows us to space out the purchasing cycle in a way that kind of sets us up appropriately for a good rotation cycle. So that's just a proposal. It certainly might, and maybe, and even if, so I just think we need a fuller vetting of the options. And I thought what I think Tim or John proposed about, digging in on capital planning this year and while we, and we have the resources to provide for whatever needs the highway department needs in the interim and come up with a more informed judgment next year. That's all.
Bobby, I just want to add that, I mean, I don't think that all the work that you've put into this has gone for naught at all. We now have it. We got it really recently. We haven't had a lot of time to really reflect long-term on it, but I mean, what you've done in terms of crunching all these numbers is, you're right, it's exactly what I'd hoped that you would do. And I'm really thankful for that. So I hope you won't feel frustrated because I think we have it. And we certainly have the funding to cover things for this year while we get a small committee together and just parse it out, because there could be different opinions about whether we buy outright or lease, et cetera, et cetera. And it would just be a reasonable thing for us to be able to sit around a table and just think about that a little bit more. I mean, I feel that if there's discomfort from anybody about deciding to go one direction or another, we just need to spend just a little bit more time. But I don't think that's time wasted. And I think that I sense that we're all really committed to this a lot. But I'm sorry that I don't want you to feel so frustrated, because I think that what you've done is really, really going to help us move this forward. I mean, we had no idea of any of this before.
Well, I guess I'd just like to see a more formal, line item though for Bob to know that he's got $200,000 in his equipment line and that the revenue, on the revenue side of our discussions and budget, it's 60,000 is taken from that fund balance and used to add to in the number crunching.
Cal, we already adopted a fund balance policy that pretty much articulates that. So I don't think we need that'd be my feeling about it. All right, well, I guess I'm going to propose to move this along and suggest that we put in 142 for this year's highway equipment line and proceed as we discussed. Are people comfortable with that?
I think if I could, if the number is almost less significant than like emotional, than the feeling of like, you're sticking your heels in, forgive me for speaking so frankly, to this 142. Let's just make it one, like it feels like you're saying, we hear you, but we're gonna still do the same thing anyway. And that doesn't feel good. I mean, I'm hearing Bobby say he feels frustrated. I also hear that Tim says, please don't feel frustrated, which is an authentic, like, please, we're really happy with your work. I hear Cal saying, let's do something formal to say we're really happy with your work, but like still in the end, it's like not what's being decided. And so I guess I would just advocate for some measure of increase.
That's kind of what I was saying.
Well, I a lot of my feeling is, trying to do this responsibly. So that's, I feel
Mark,
like
you-
what,
Mark, you
You
are
know-
incredibly responsible.
thank you, Cal. But anyway, I
And-
think I think this is responsible to Bobby in the highway department. I think it's responsible to the taxpayers. So,
I think there are
I-
many lenses to look at responsibility through, Mark.
There are.
and I'm,
Sometimes making investments is also responsible, right? And I don't know where the tipping point of that is, but I would argue that that too is prudent, particularly really since all we're talking is shifting a little bit of money out of fund balance and dedicating it to a highway line. We're not actually necessarily proposing we add it to the tax cap per se.
to the tax levy.
Indeed.
Okay. I guess I would like somebody else. I've stated my position, so I don't want to.
Well, I'm trying to understand, John, what you would be proposing exactly, because I thought that we had already just understood that the leeway is in fund balance. Are you proposing to like take it out of fund balance? I just don't understand what you're proposing.
I think that is exactly what I'm proposing, right? I'm advocating that we raise the funding of the line as Catherine had suggested. And that a way that we can do that without having significant impact on the tax levy is to move it out of fund balance, of which we have quite a bit. We've certainly used in the past fund balance to offset the tax cap and the levy. So it's not without precedent. It's just dedicating it to a particular purpose.
I mean, in a way, I don't have any problems with that, but I think the only consideration would be determining precedent. I mean, that's clearly not something that you could do every year. And we also, I mean, if we did this, I'd still like to do a little bit more work in the near future to figure out what the bottom number really should be.
I agree with that
You know what I'm saying?
completely. Yeah, I'm totally in agreement with that, Tim.
Totally agree.
But I don't
So
even
what-
understand how one does that within the budget. So,
Yeah. So what are people feeling comfortable with for the budget line? If you're not comfortable with my number.
I'm just throwing out 195, which is 130 plus 50%.
And
and taking the difference from fund balance, correct? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I mean, I'm comfortable with that, but I don't think we should just necessarily commit to wanting to spend all of it. You know, if you see what I'm saying, I mean, that's
Yep.
what happens with fund balance.
Yeah,
I think that's an
spend it or
important
lose
point.
it. Yeah, spend it or lose it. Mentality,
No, we don't want to have a spend it or lose it mentality,
Right.
right? That's what I'm saying.
right?
All right, well, it's getting late, so I don't think that's, I don't know. So what's the justification for the 50% over 130, Cal?
You know, part of it just having to come up with what I think is just having to come up with a number somehow.
What if we
130
budgeted?
What
What if we
130
budgeted
was
the
from
last year's number, 180?
what? Well, 130 was from your chart about, you know, through, you know, 130 over the years. And, you know, if you go look at the inflation index, it's about over 20 years, inflation is added about 50% over the last 20, 25 years. So the value of $1 in 1996, $1 would buy a lot more than it will buy today. So,
If
and you know, it's a river running by, but I just,
I was just looking at Bobby's chart that he distributed when I wasn't here. And I might be misunderstanding this, but Bobby has a 164 annual average figure there.
He does.
So maybe, I don't know, Bob, what that figure is, but that could be a good place to start.
Yeah.
The 164 is basically just the stuff you see on that page. That's just the big, kind of the big ticket stuff. And that does fluctuate. You know, 164 is kind of the average. It does fluctuate, you know, up and down there a little bit.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about a good logical holding place for this year. That's all. I just saw that number, so that's just what I was asking about.
That seems reasonable, Tim. It's 164, 428. We could make it 165.
Yeah, and we still have the leeway of the fund balance anyway. I mean, we've all agreed that that's within the window that what we're talking about, right?
Correct. Yes.
Would that make it easier for you, Mark, to, I guess it doesn't matter in terms of finessing all the numbers in the budget? If you're gonna build
We
the
will,
fund balance anyway.
yeah. Yeah, no, we, you know, we'll put the numbers in and see how it comes out and make the adjustments we need to. No. I mean, I like it that it's based on an analysis, on Bob's analysis. I like that.
If we were, may I just jump in, because I'm now I'm frustrated, because if we were going to go based on Bob's analysis, it never would have been 142. So I'm having trouble decide, like, you know, hearing like when we're going to go based on an analysis and when we're not. I mean, we're just, if we're going to
Well,
go.
I was
based on-
I guess, to be honest, I was looking for, you know, I'm saying now that we've decided that you want to make an adjustment, that I think that we need some rational basis to do that. I felt like 142 was a reasonable estimate based on historical patterns that I had. So,
Right. No, I hear that. And I mean, we heard your analysis. I guess that's why I just threw out, you know, like 150, 160, but I don't feel like I'm in a position to like piddle over like these numbers, like it just seems silly. So let's like go with something that's a real number, which sounds like it's now 165, but I just don't want it to be framed as like, oh, well, we're just throwing a number out there to make it less than what, Cal proposed.
Oh.
Like, it doesn't feel.
No,
Okay.
I mean, Catherine, the number that I proposed came from Bob's average.
Right. I'm saying we should go with that.
In a long-term plan, so that seemed to me to be a good way to go, that's all.
Oh, I know, I'm agreeing with you 100%. I guess what I'm taking issue with is that, then the commentary about, well, let's go with the analysis. And I feel like we hadn't, I mean, there's everyone has different analysis, I guess, is at the end of the day, right?
This is a
So-
process. This is a process. And in the process, different people are going to have different approaches. And we have a meeting like this to trade thoughts, and we all learn, and we come out in a certain place. So, and maybe not everybody's going to be completely 100% thrilled with everything, but that's what happens across the budget.
No, I understand that.
So. Yeah. I'm looking for direction from the board. I'm feeling like I need that.
Well, I made a proposal, but it was just based on the number that I saw on Bobby's sheet. Realizing, Bob, that it was also doesn't take into consideration all the equipment, but we're not going to do all of the equipment this year. But it's a start. And we also have additional fund balance if we were in a position where we needed to turn to that. So it seems to me to be a really reasonable and positive step. Instead of, Cal, I mean, I'm doing this instead of just pulling a number out of the hat, which, based on, let's just do half more or something. I understand what you're doing, but this seems to me to at least be based on something that's been proposed to us in a certain framework.
I'm comfortable with that, but there's a
John,
lot of silence.
Thinking.
What was Bob's proposed number?
164, 428.
That was the average in his spreadsheet.
But what was his request from the,
202.
Guess I don't quite understand, Bob, the difference between the 202 and the 164. Is that because you're trying to make up for other equipment? Sorry, because I wasn't here at that meeting.
If you happen to look at that sheet and you look down the road a few years, you'll see where everything kind of hits the big turnover. And there's some years that there's very little needed. 164 is just an average over that 30-year capital plan. like I said, it fluctuates from year to year. It's not a, if you put $160,000 in, it's some years you're gonna be short, some years, some years down the road, we won't need that much, but that's where that number comes down.
I was asking about your 200 number in contrast to the 164.
Like I said, the 164 is averaged over 30 years.
Right.
Um,
But I guess what I'm just trying to ask, Bobby, if we went
Okay.
164 this year, is that going to be a disaster or is that a good placeholder? Just till we get the planning out next year, now that we have these base figures to begin to think about it.
it'll change the plan that I had going forward. I mean, we're gonna have to work with whatever's there to work with, but the 202 in the long run was gonna give back approximately 60,000 in equipment sold. Got to have it up front in order to get it. So
For next year or long term?
I'm just speaking next year.
Bob, it looks like. looking
There's
at-
1 year, Tim, it says we need $70,000. It's out a few years, but if you look down, it shows that we need a budget line of 70,000. And there's a few years there where it's under 164, but there's some years where it's actually over 200, but once the revenue comes back, brings that number back down.
So Bob, it looks like in your model spreadsheet that year has 3 installment purchases for snow plows. And then a chipper and a repurchase payment of 12,000 for the loader. So if that's where the 202 comes from, I don't know if that's right or not.
I don't have that sheet in front of me, but those numbers sound correct. Like I said, in next year's budget, I set $50,000 aside for the purchase of a truck. I also did put in to replace a chipper, and
Okay.
yes, my plan shows trading that loader in yearly,
Okay.
which resulted in a 0 repair bill for that one piece of equipment.
So that would be, this has 3 $50,000 purchases on it. So that would be one less. So-
Next year's doesn't have 3 $50,000 payments.
Oh, it doesn't?
No, because we currently have one.
Right, but I mean, it has one
if you-
black one for 2. Oh, I see. No, one is something else. Oh, no, that's a 388.
388
that's-
is
Pickup
388 is a pickup truck.
truck. Okay, I
which-
got you. Yeah.
They pretty much wash themselves out. We've got that part down pretty good. When we get rid of them, we sell them on Auctions International. It comes out to be a few $1,000s.
I got you.
So in that plan also showed buying the chipper outright, buying a pickup truck outright. The only thing the payment was for was to put towards another truck, which inevitably, if was ordered in a week, wouldn't show up for a year and a half. So it's more thinking ahead than so that you'd mentioned spend it or lose it. It's not that we're looking to spend it all. We're actually looking to actually put some of that aside.
Well, that's what fund balance is for.
Yeah.
I guess I'm kind of confused because I'm looking at what you're looking at and I see the 202 is total new equipment, but then I see yearly budget needs is 142 because you're basing it on a $60,000 return from equipment sales. So unless I'm misreading this, we're now ahead by almost $25,000. So it seems like we're in a good place, no?
Right, like I said, that's just, these numbers are strictly on the big stuff. I haven't listed anything else. There's 3 other sheets of equipment inventory that's not even on this sheet. So as much as I'd like to say that this whole number comes down to this 140, like I'm saying, we also have smaller things that we have to try to replace a little bit here and there each year. And to be honest, I couldn't possibly sit down and put every piece of those pieces of equipment into that spreadsheet. It just, the amount of time that would take and to change one thing changes the whole line of things. And these other things are smaller. They're smaller ticket items. There are a few thousand here and
I'm
there.
just trying to understand, Bobby, but it looks like if we go at 165 based on the figures just for here for the large items, that then gives us about a $25,000 cash buffer in addition to if we had to draw out of fund balance. So I'm just asking if that doesn't seem to put us in a good position for next year based on these figures. Am I missing something?
I mean, like I said, I will make do with whatever we put in there. Like I said, something, it changes it. I have to get the new stuff here before I can get rid of the old stuff. And that's what those numbers reflect. You know, I went into this not even considering using fund balances. We went into budget season last year. We were all paranoid because there was no fund balance.
Yeah, I know, but
Now,
I mean,
now we have a surplus of fund balance. So going into this, I can't plan on using fund balance, and I didn't plan on using fund balance in any of this going forward.
no, we don't want you to, but now we have the leeway where we can think about that a little bit. So what I'm asking is if we have that, think of that cushion and we go with a 165 number, aren't we in a good place? We're in a pretty good place, right? Because if we needed to, that could get us up to the 200 number.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I went into this whole budget thing not changing any numbers that I had from last year. Basically gonna, a lot for the inflation in the numbers that I had last year. The budget I presented last year was fine, didn't put us over any tax caps or anything. So I went with those same exact numbers. And then I guess some of it is a little confusing because it's, now all of a sudden those numbers, they aren't good. What we had last year isn't a good number for this year. And last year I thought those numbers were, I thought they were pretty good numbers. But if you guys want to make it 160, put it at 160, we'll find a way to make it work.
I'd propose that we do that. It seems very reasonable to me. It's getting late.
You're proposing we do what, Mark? I'm
I'm proposing we set the change the tentative budget line to $165,000 as Tim proposed. It seems reasonable from the discussion I've heard.
To me.
Sure. I mean, we have time before we approve the final budget that if anybody has some additional insight, we can
Sure.
make adjustments to any of this, but that's at least I think a good starting place and possibly a good ending place.
Great, okay. Let me make sure I have everything I'm supposed to have here. Don't get car sick. 2000. $17,000. $14,950. Oh. Oh, no.
You broke it.
Does anybody know how I make it undo that?
Mark, I think
Yeah.
if you look up at toward the top where it says Zoom, just above it, it says 25%. I think if you change that, yeah, right where you are.
Oh, yes, thank you.
I think that's all it is.
Yep.
Just go to 100.
Yeah, try that.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Breathe. There you go.
I don't know what I did on my touchpad to make it do that, but yeah.
Doesn't take
Crazy.
much.
Okay, now we're trying to go down to the bottom to see. Okay. That's good. Okay. I'm going to change that. That's a little tight to me. Don't want to end up on the wrong side of the law. So by doing that, I just applied 25,000 of fund balance to reduce from the DA fund balance to reduce the levy, which should put us under the tax cap by 6453. Does that seem reasonable to folks?
Sorry, say that one more time if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so I just applied fund balance here from the DA fund balance to get under the tax cap because we exceeded the tax cap with these changes. And I put it 0.34% below the tax cap. I didn't want to put it right at the tax cap in case there's some little number issue or whatever. So that we end up actually exceeding the tax cap when we didn't mean to. So this ends up, this is the levy is a 2.44% increase in the levy. And it's it puts us minus 0.34% below the tax cap. And for a $200,000 house, it will increase. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention before I finish my comments here, I did get budget numbers for our Caroline Fire Protection districts. And so I put those in. Here they are. So the Speedsville contract was up 1.1%. Brooktondale was flat, so 0% increase. So just want to point those two things out. And so this will result in a, what is that, like an $18 increase in taxes, which 1.11%.
Beats the county.
So, so given that, I now will offer a resolution to make the following budget changes to the tentative budget. So for A1110.404, increase from $1,000 to $2,000. For A3310.3, traffic control, increase from $2,500 to $5,500. For A5010.101, highway clerical, increase from $15,000 to $17,000. For A5010.4, highway office contractual, increase from $5,000 to $14,950. And for DA 5030.2, highway equipment, increase from 142,000 to 165,000. Do I have a second?
14. 14.
Yes.
Seconded by John. Any further discussion? no further discussion. I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you. And now I will offer a resolution to, oh yeah, and I forgot to add into that. I will offer a separate resolution. I think I should have that in there to apply $25,000 of fund balance, DA, to offset the levy.
Second that.
Seconded by Cal. Discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great, okay, thank you. And now I'm gonna call for a vote to adopt the 2022 preliminary budget, which will result from these changes. So do I have a second for that?
Second.
Seconded by, was that
John.
John? John, okay. And any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? And now I will offer a resolution to hold the public hearing on the Caroline 2022 preliminary budget at our November 3rd, at the beginning of our November 3rd agenda meeting at 7 p.m. Do I
Second.
have a second? And John seconded that again. Any further discussion or questions? So without that, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. So we've adopted the preliminary budget and we'll hold a public hearing at the beginning of that meeting and go from there. So thank you.
I think you have one more resolution to offer, Mark. Called adjournment.
I was trying to think of a wording for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. So unless anybody has a pressing thing to add to the agenda tonight, which I should have asked for at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah.
So anyway, thanks for joining for a special budget meeting, and thanks to Judge Barr and Bobby for joining us for the discussion. So with that, I'll call for adjournment of tonight's meeting. Do I get a second?
Second.
There you go.
Second by Tim.
Tim got right in there.
You missed it again, Catherine. So
So close, so close.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Congratulations
Thanks,
on the
everyone.
budget.
Yep. Nice work.
Aye.
Good night.
Aye.